Churchill said that we should never let a good crisis go to waste. However, most leaders waste every single one instead of leveraging them. Why? Because we have an instinct to immediately resolve things, plug the hole, make things go back to normal. What if normal is the problem in the first place? Crises aren't interruptions necessarily, they're windows of malleability that open the door to a new way of doing things. Periods in which the status quo is ripe to be changed. And if you notice that, if you seize the opportunity, you have a lot more leverage as a leader to create an organization that has the possibility of being uniquely special and not just yet another startup. When crisis hits, that's when real leadership either shows up or shuts down. In this video, we're going to talk about how you as a leader can spot these crises when they happen and avoid the knee-jerk reaction of trying to fix things as opposed to witnessing the inflection point that you might be in front of. By the way, hi, if you're new here, I'm Aviv Ben-Yosef. I help tech executives create tech organizations worth leading because life's too short to lead mediocre teams. And when we rush to fix things, to plug the hole, as I said, we're actually trying to keep things mediocre, to keep things as they were, as opposed to looking for the opportunity to make things better, to improve them. In a recent article I published about organizational martial arts, I talked about how we need to learn to not try to combat every punch we get, not just try to roll with the punches, but look for how, in martial arts, they always keep talking about using the energy of the opponent. If a crisis hits you, I want you to think, how can we use this in order to do something where we'll actually get out of this even better? Like a phoenix, we're going to rise from a disaster even stronger, even more capable. The new version of ourselves, of the company, will be a better one, even if we've got a few scars to show for it. And yeah, in that article, I talked about our tendency as leaders to do the knee-jerk reaction of fixing things. Someone leaves, I'm going to hire someone else. One of my leaders is gonna leave, I'm gonna promote someone real quick. AI is changing the marketplace, let's just throw some AI feature on the roadmap so we can check that box instead of understanding what really should we be doing. COVID hits, we just try to install Zoom and be okay with it, as opposed to saying, okay, how should a hybrid startup look like? You cannot just try to wing it. Sometimes you have to sit for a second and decide, how, given this new change, do I want my company to look like? Had I always known that this would happen, how would I have changed my approach? And even if you cannot do everything because you didn't know this up front, realize that now's better than never. What will you do? So let's start with this as your first takeaway. Stop thinking that crisis always equals a problem. A crisis might be a short-term headache, it might create some issues, be an obstacle right now, but it doesn't always necessarily mean that the result will be bad. It just might be that you'll be better off after it has happened. I've had clients who had to go through iterations in their structure, in their approach, in their product, in their strategy, because they were hit with these constant crises. But when they realized that this was happening, and instead of trying to cocoon themselves, to be like an ostrich with their heads in the sand and trying to pretend that if they just keep going, if they just make things better, if they just Command Z things to undo the latest crisis, things will be just fine. However, no, I want to tell you that you as a leader should try to have this suspension of disbelief when something bad happens, when something surprises you. Sometimes it might be tough for a couple of months. I'm not saying there's a magic trick here, but I am saying that you are going to be better off if you try to find the opportunity in each of those cases. If you don't just shrug and try to undo, but you try to do something, to take the lead, to take the initiative. And when we disassociate crises from problems, we allow ourselves to have that moment to try and spot those opportunities. We create a culture where that's possible. Instead, what so many startups do, even though we all say that, yeah, startups are hard, there's a roller coaster. When I talk to people day to day, not the LinkedIn posts you see months later after they have found a nice way of telling the story, but when I'm in there with them, in the trenches, when a crisis hits, the default for the majority of people I see is to go into shock and try to run away, fix things as fast as possible. Not a lot of us, and I'm not pretending as if this comes easy for me as well, but not a lot of us have this tendency of seeing a change coming upon us, seeing someone moving our cheese and say, hey, if you're gonna move it, I think that would actually be a better position. We don't have that instinct, and if you will have that, even a bit, you will be in a position to create something much more valuable. You will upgrade your own leadership and create a lot of opportunities for your organization to be something remarkable. So let's go through a few tactical examples of how you can leverage a crisis. One example is when something in the market shifts, when something major happens, and how will you approach that? For example, I've had a few clients who saw something major happen, be it because crypto crisis and things kept changing, be it because Apple changed how ad tracking works and it really affected their products, be it because COVID changed the real estate market. And those who became better due to this were not those who tried to find a hack to continue. Maybe short term that's what you have to do because you got to keep things afloat. But the companies that I worked with that really made something remarkable were those that said, okay, this is a new world. We have to take a second to ideate, to think what actually makes sense within the new world that we're now aware of, and change direction, even if it's hard, even if the company was already pretty tuned to a specific direction, because just because it's easy to go down that path doesn't mean it's going to get you where you want to get. Things have changed. There's been an earthquake. That path is going to be blocked down the line, even if right now it seems clear. You have to, like Waze does, reevaluate your path to understand that you're going to get where you want to get. Another example, of course, is with AI. I'm guessing a lot of you have had a lot of different reactions to what we're going to do. Some companies said, okay, there's now AI. I'm going to just tell my people, whoever wants some AI Copilot, I'm going to give them the license and that's it. I think that's not really trying to solve for how startups should look with AI, with LLMs. It's just trying to check the box. Okay, I'm good. I can tell my board we did that. I've got a different video about how AI probably has killed your startup, and that's a specific private case of what we're talking about today. So if you want to see that more in depth, I will link to it. The card will be somewhere here on screen. But in general, AI, what it meant for many was, how can I show the board, the CEO, whatever, that we're good, as opposed to taking a second to think, what does this really enable? Again, think about, had you known that everything that we now have possible would be possible 2 years ago, what would you have changed in your product roadmap then? And yes, not everything is still applicable, but think about, what can we do? What can we leverage out of that? Again, we're talking about another tactical example. When people leave, when you have some organizational shifts, maybe you realize that because the company had to go through layoffs, you're trying to just churn somehow ahead and keep doing the same things you were doing. And I say, no, kill the zombie project. Use it as an opportunity to redo the company's culture, to upgrade your operating system. Because if you just say, okay, we had to lay off 10%, 15% of people, like I saw a lot of companies do in the past 2 years. If you said, okay, that was done, but now we're going to keep plowing ahead, essentially saying, okay, that's too bad, but we're going to try again to do the same thing, you're probably going to be repeating the same mistakes. And even if you're going to be okay because you don't have that extra cost of those people you had to lay off, that doesn't mean you actually leverage that crisis. It's sort of a sin to have to go through something as dramatic as letting people go and not change our ways. When I talk to a lot of companies, a lot of CEOs ask, okay, you just cut all of those people. How is your roadmap now different? All of them just shrugged and say, why should it be different? No, you need to use these opportunities to redo things and think, how can we now create a better organization because we have less overhead, because we can allow ourselves to be more agile, because we have these people who are now more committed. I know, find a way to find the thing in this situation that is actually now a unique advantage. There's not one always, but if you have this sort of mentality, this executive mindset that I talked about in a recent podcast episode that I'll link to, you will see that more often than not, you can find these opportunities and create something worth having. You can do something others cannot because most people are on autopilot. We just try to revert back to the mean as opposed to looking to the side and saying, okay, maybe we're in a local maxima. How do I break out of this situation and get to the leap to the next level? As we're getting close to the end, I also want to give you one final warning. The myth of stability. We are in the startup land. Things are insane. Things change a lot. You cannot have in your brain this vision of what normalcy means and always trying to go to it. You have to embrace the insanity that's our industry. I know that sounds harsh, but you have to learn to love it. Otherwise, you're going to be finding things a lot harder. Alan Weiss, I think, coined the term no normal, as in you cannot go back to normal. There's no normal. Things are normal as they are for a period, but then when they change, there's never coming back. You can't enter the same river twice, as they say. You have to find a better direction, create the opportunity ahead. You cannot always think about how things were 2 months ago, a year ago. That's gone, right? You now are a different organization, like the myth about that ship where, the Theseus ship, I think, if you keep changing all the parts of the ship as it is sailing, when it comes back to port, is it even the same ship? The same happens in startups. We have to keep replacing things. And even if it feels odd, even if it's not like it were before, you have to believe that doing so means you'll probably be better for it. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but solely if you use that opportunity to get stronger, to upgrade your organization. If you just say, oh my God, that just killed me. Oh, I'm lucky, and keep moving forward, that same thing just might kill you 5 minutes later. You have to learn from mistakes, from disasters, from crises, and if you do that, you just might have a shot at creating something remarkable. And life's too short to aim at anything else. What do great leaders do? They avoid automatic action. They see the fog and understand that it's always going to be there and try to find the opportunity that it's hiding. And they stop trying to revert back to how things were. They always assume that where we are right now is the new basis and try to find an opportunity, a new leap from where we're currently are. And if you have that constant process in your mind of saying, no, I'm not going to rush to just undo, to plug the hole. I'm going to take a second and reassess. That's how you work on your leadership muscle to become better as a leader, not just a tech leader, a leader in general. So the next time crisis hits, I want you to think, how can I leverage this? Remember Churchill, and you just might find an amazing opportunity. That's it. Thank you for watching. If you like this, please like and subscribe. It really helps me. And I'm gonna show you somewhere on screen another video that I think you're gonna like. Till next time. Ciao.